Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Culp. I am in RPH 111, which is Religion of the Old Testament. My professor is Professor Evelise Quinones. The topic I chose for my research paper and my oral presentation is the Mosaic Covenant. Behind me I have my visual board. I have 3 articles that I actually put in my paper. I used this one to establish the leadership qualities of Moses. I used this one as a more in-depth background information of the Mosaic Covenant that I did not have. This one is used, it helped me understand what the actual purpose of the Mosaic Covenant being established was. And then this one is just a definition of the Mosaic Covenant. And this is my cover page from my paper. So with my paper, I started off with my introduction, and I just talked about pretty much what a covenant was, because when I hear covenant, I automatically think of God's promises, because in church, that's what I always learned, that whenever there was a covenant made, it was because God was making a promise for something or with someone. The Mosaic Covenant is actually a bilateral covenant, which means it is connected with God and another person or a group of people, and in this circumstance, the other side of the covenant is Moses and the Israelites. This covenant is also called the Sinai Covenant because it was established in the desert Mount Sinai. And it was established in about 1202 approximately. And that's pretty much the background information of the Mosaic Covenant. Next, I went into one of the purposes of the Mosaic Covenant, and that was to establish that God wanted the Israelites to be obedient to Him because He did save them from the bondage of slavery in Israel. They were being enslaved by the Egyptians, and God chose the Israelites to be His chosen people, and for this they did owe Him obedience. And I found an article, and it stated something, and it said that God promised blessings for obedience and curses for disobedience. The covenant addressed itself to Israel and Israel alone. With its divinely authoritative rules, the stipulated standards of righteousness. And this is true because God would establish blessings as long as the Israelites would not sin. And if they did sin, there just wouldn't be no blessings, and then there could possibly be something that they could not want. With this being said, God did save the Israelites from slavery, but He did not. Well, with them being obedient and following Him, this did not guarantee their salvation at all. They had to put in more work through God to guarantee their salvation. Then in my next paragraph, I went into a much deeper purpose for the covenant. Yes, God wanted His chosen people to obey Him, but He also wanted them to have the strong urge to worship Him. He wanted His chosen people to know that He is God and the only God, and not worship anyone else. And with this goes with the 10 Commandments, because one of the 10 Commandments is you will not serve any other gods. So this was the much deeper purpose behind the Mosaic Covenant. He wanted His people to have the strong urge to worship Him. And with this, they did. They honestly did. In the beginning, they strayed away from God, and now they had the urge to worship Him. And then after that, I went into the comparison of the Old Testament and the New Testament. And the way they connected is in the Old Testament, Moses was the chosen leader from God. God handpicked Moses to save the Israelites from bondage and slavery and sin, because if it wasn't for Moses establishing the covenant with God, the Israelites just would have remained in sin for who knows how long. And then in the new covenant, Moses wasn't the chosen leader anymore. Jesus of Nazareth was. Jesus was handpicked by God, and God chose the Virgin Mary to be his mother, and Jesus grew up to save all of humanity from sin, the slavery of sin, if you say. And this is how they correlated, but both established very important leadership skills. Moses, for example, showed empathy towards the Israelites, and a big example that I found was one day Moses was walking around and he saw an Egyptian beating an Israelite, and he killed the Egyptian for it. He felt empathetic towards the Israelites for what was going on to them, and he killed an Egyptian, one of his people. Jesus was empathetic too, but Jesus was able to put himself on a new level. He didn't see people through classes like they did at the time. He could see a poor person and a rich person and still want to spread the gospel of God. He did not see the difference in people. And it brought trust and it brought faith in Jesus, and his followers trusted him, which was an excellent leadership skill. But the way the Old Testament and the New Testament related was because Moses and Jesus were both chosen leaders from God. After this, I went into the the modern day connection of the Mosaic covenant. And the only one that I could establish was, in modern day time, most people still follow the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt respect their neighbor, things like this. But an example that I saw is that the Mosaic covenant really only went with the Israelites. The Mosaic covenant wasn't established for other people. It was established for this group of people. And an example that I saw was there are state laws and that there are national laws, and the Mosaic covenant was almost like a state law, and it only applied to the Israelites. And so there wasn't really a lot of modern day connections that I could find. The only one that I could find was that the 10 Commandments are still in today's world, and people still use them. And then after I stated that, I just went into my conclusion and concluded that God made this covenant for specific purposes, whether it was obedience or the strong urge to worship God. But God showed his almighty power by providing for his people that praised him. He served this in a moment of chaos, and he ended the bondage of slavery and sin. So, thank you.